All right, I'm going to call the regularly scheduled meeting for the Show Low Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Roll call shows that all commissioners are present. I'm going to go ahead and have an invocation by Commissioner John Adams, and then we're going to have a pledge by Commissioner Josh Adams.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful this evening to have the opportunity to meet together and to discuss our beautiful community. We ask that Thy Spirit may be here as we go over these things, that Thou will help us to make the decisions that we need to help our community be strong and grow. We are grateful for this moisture that we received, and we're grateful for all of our blessings we enjoy here in the area we live. And we say these things in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Seeing that we have no old business, we'll go to item number 6A, which is new business, a conditional use permit submitted by Arrowhead Fire and Medical Authority. I'll turn the time over to Mrs. Fechtel-Cotter.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Arrowhead Fire and Medical Authority, Inc. has submitted a conditional use permit, or CUP, to allow for an ambulance station to be located at 501 South Clark Road, that being APN 309-3703063B. Applicant has requested to add ambulance station on a portion of the subject property. The property is zoned C1, which is neighborhood commercial. An ambulance station requires a CUP in the C1 zone. The applicant will be occupying a portion of the Kachina office building on the property. There are several other businesses that operate out of that building as well. There's an existing paved parking lot and landscaping at this location. Arrowhead plans to park the ambulance to the rear of the building as indicated on the submitted site plan. The current zoning of the surrounding properties includes to north, south, east, and west C1 neighborhood commercial, to the west PUD, which is planned unit development. The current land uses of the surrounding properties includes to the north residential, to the south commercial, to the east residential, and to the west an undeveloped townhome subdivision. Transmittal memos were sent to all affected agencies, and applicable comments received include Timber Mesa Fire and Medical District stated that this will be a change of occupancy. Compliance with current codes and standards is required. And the building official said it must meet the R3 occupancy, which will require a building permit from the city. This must be done prior to occupying the building. The property was posted, and letters were sent to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, and no public comment was received regarding the CUP at the time the staff report was prepared. After reviewing the standards for review, the zoning ordinance, discussions with the applicant, and because the request is consistent with the City of Show Low general plan, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve CUP 602-04-220, submitted by Arrowhead Fire and Medical Authority, allow for an ambulance station on property located at 501 South Park Road, that being APN 309-37063B, subject to the following conditions. 1, all development shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local requirements, including building permit requirements. And number 2, the applicant shall coordinate with the building official to ensure compliance with the building code requirements within 30 days of the effective date of this CUP. Staff, as well as the applicant, is available for questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fechtel-Cotter. Does the commission have any questions for staff at this time? All right, seeing there none, is there any questions for the applicant at this time? Can you come up there and state your full name in the microphone and also your address so we can get a clear record?
Anthony Kugler, your address is 1000 East Mills here in Show.
All right, Commissioner Robertson.
So where you're located, and if you get a call in the middle of the night, let's say, at what point do you flip on your siren?
From that particular location, we wouldn't activate our siren until we approach actually Deuce Clubs, so probably within about 500 feet of Deuce Clubs.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
All right, other questions? Commissioner Josh Adams, excuse me.
Yes, first question. Considering the location of the back parking lot where your ambulance will be parked, do you have any safety protocols on how the ambulance is going to go from the rear parking lot to the front parking lot and then out to Clark Road?
It's a standard parking. It does have a very narrow driveway on the right-hand side. We have walked through with all the crews as far as, approaching the corner, and, it's very slow coming out of there. It's a couple miles an hour. That station primarily would only be used in the spring and summer months when it starts to get busier over at Torion. This time of year, in the past, we had a station that was up further in the Bison Ridge development, and it was a seasonal station. So it's one where weather's good, it's clear visibility, and obviously we'd maintain, as much visual as we can for anybody that's, walking around.
So essentially drive slow is what you're saying?
You have to on that property. It's extremely slow and extremely tight.
Okay. And then my second question regarding the passage on the west side. Do you have a plan or anything in place to prevent maybe parking that might impede your access point there?
The only thing we've talked about is posting a sign, emergency egress. Currently, there is nothing. There's only one other, we've talked to the building owner as well as some of the other occupants of the building. There's only one other occupant that enters through the rear of the property there, and that is the actual neighbor to us on the lower level. And she's the only other one that parks back there. Everybody else parks up in the front, and that was one of the conditions we spoke with the property owner about, is we didn't want to take away from any of the parking of the public that was, and patrons that were coming there to do business. So that's one of the reasons we put it in the back.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner John Adams.
What will be the hours that'll be operational? What, will you be evenings or daytime or what?
Well, we do operate 24 hours, 7 days a week. As I mentioned, that particular location seems to be seasonal. So I would say typically that station wouldn't come online until springtime, or when we start to see some of those summer visitors and spring visitors come back. But it would be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week upon going through the permit changes and all the things that are required.
So you will have people staying the night at that place?
If it is permitted by the city's building inspector. We had a brief discussion when we first looked at the property. He did give us a list of things that would need to be done, and we're willing to make those changes. But obviously, we want to stay in compliance.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hebner.
So the entrance from Park and the egress on and out there is pretty decent slope, and it's also kind of if I remember, an asphalt kind of a situation. Ambulances are typically pretty heavy. You're concerned about the breakdown of that over time, in and out?
Where our main station is located at 1000 East Mills, whoever built that station built it below grade. And so our ambulances are 4-wheel drive, and we do also use snow tires in the winter, or studded tires. And we really haven't seen too much of a problem. And that becomes pretty icy. It just all seems to kind of slope right down into where the ambulance bay is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to the public. If any of the members of the public would like to come up and address the commission on this specific item, we'd invite your comments at this point. Seeing nobody move, I will. Mrs. Lotman, come on up and state your full name for the record, and please state your address. And we'd like to keep it specifically to this item here. So that's agended.
Well, actually, we just received this. We've been out of town, and the other people that live near on the other side of us, both sides, they're out of town, so we don't have that representation. It was printed on the 24th. I didn't actually check the envelope. I am Linda Lotman, and I live at Shallow Country Club, and it's just some property that we own there, residential property. And as I read this, a couple things came to mind that I don't know it's an issue, because what has been discussed is pretty limited, and I haven't read anything that's been written so I can study it. and compare it to anything. So it's just what has been, I don't know if this has been going on for some time or not. And I was thinking about the industrial area on the east side of Show Low. I thought that was the whole purpose of having that kind of stuff over at the other end of our city, or across the 260 with the business. And because think of the noise factor that you had mentioned, would there be such a thing? And I just was wondering about the interference or the encroachment with the residential area and homes in that area. I mean, I don't know enough about what has been discussed in detail other than they're requesting a, what does it say here, conditional use permit for this. So I don't know if it's long-term, short-term, what, you know, and I don't know how that would affect the value of the residential areas above, because a lot of it is not developed. It is owned, but it's not developed. No, the C1 zone, I remember when they put in that little strip mall, it was a big deal. People did not want that there. And they said this was it, limited, you know. And of course, I knew as years progress and people die off and people forget, they do start, you know, trying to make that, and it is zoned for that, but it was changed for that zoning to be able to do that. So I really don't even know what, I mean, my first thing is a concern, but I don't know if it is validated because I don't know enough information on other than what's just been discussed for the last 2 to 3 minutes. So I don't know if there's an application that we could review that they have submitted or what. But I do have a concern that it may devalue perhaps because of factors that we are unaware of that may happen by having it in that location. So that's why we're here tonight.
All right, thank you. I'll just answer, Ms. Loman, there is an application that they submitted to staff, and we have it part of our packet that we've been reviewing, and it has the site plans and various things, and we have those available that you can review if you don't review it either now or afterwards. And normally when you get a notification in the mail, like your property, like if a property is being rezoned or if it's being conditional use permit, all of those materials are available at City Hall. It would just be cumbersome and state statute requires that we notify property owners who are affected within 300 feet, and it would be cost prohibitive to mail that to all of the affected property owners. So we make that available at City Hall.
Okay. Did I misunderstand, or was it stated that they are moving from one location in Show Low to this location, requesting it? Right? Is that?
I'll let Mr. Tregaskis answer some of your concerns and also that question. He has a little bit more information about that. So.
Could I ask
Because I would guess the people if they are now existing somewhere in Show Low, you know, the people, or if it's in a residential area and outside of it, they would probably have an opinion about whether it was a good thing for the area or it was something that you'd be concerned about.
Mrs. Lokman, can I ask, just for clarification, where is your property in relation to this?
Above it.
You're right behind it?
Up north of it.
Okay, so you're right behind, you're at 551 South Clark Road then, is that?
I'm not sure exactly. But we're above from where the little strip thing. So I'm not exactly knowing.
Okay. So if, a
I
few.
just pay property taxes. That's all I remember.
I understand. I pay them too.
And there, like I said, there's some other, we took a parcel and divided it, I don't know how many years ago, a number of years ago. And we called them and they weren't around to even come and participate. So we got this afternoon, which is not your fault, but.
Okay.
Over here.
So if I can answer some of these questions. The property is zone C1, which is a neighborhood commercial zoning district. Within that district, there are things which are considered a permitted use, and then there are things which are considered a conditional use. Conditional use are things that, you know, may require a little bit more review and a little bit more of a looking at before we say it's okay. In this case, an ambulance station in the C1 zone has been determined to be a conditional use. That's why you got the letter. That's why we're here this evening. In response to commercial zones versus industrial zones versus locating here versus out in the industrial park. And the applicant could speak to this, I'm sure, better than I can, but with the ambulance service stations, what they're trying to do is place these locations at different spots within the community so that their response time can be reduced. Just as an example, if there was an accident at the corner of Clark and the Deuce right there, obviously this location would be much faster to respond to than somebody who's out by the airport. So that's why you see ambulance stations kind of scattered around throughout the community. It's not that they're trying to do anything other than be able to get there quicker. And that's why they're requesting here. They have actually been operating out of this location for approximately the past 6 months. We've been working with the owner in getting them through the process so that they actually meet the requirements of city code. That's one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is so that we can establish that they're actually legal to operate out of that location, as well as the building code requirements. And it's kind of one of those things. They have been there a while. We have not received, from staff's perspective, any complaints from the neighbors of them operating out of that location. Certainly, we do have noise requirements and things like that. If a business is causing noise issues with adjoining residential property owners, that is something that we can look at and contact the business and say, hey, we got an issue here. We have not received any of those types of complaints while they've been operating out of this location.
Well, just to clarify, that where we own the property, it's not, the homes have not been
Okay.
constructed there, so the shipments would not be calling in.
Right.
To let you know, hey,
Gotcha.
this is tearing us up out here.
We haven't heard it from across the street, in Park
Yes.
Valley or anything like that. We have not received any complaints or concerns from any of the neighbors. As far as length of time, conditional use permits typically run with the property as long as the use is being continued on the property itself, or until such time as either they violate the conditions of approval or they stop using it for a period of 12 months. The commission does have the ability, and they've done this in the past, to say, we want to look at this in 12 months from now, just to see if we are having problems. And if so, let's look at it a little bit more closely. They have done that in some instances in the past where they've had concerns related to compatibility with the neighborhood and, different things like that. So that is an option for the commission if they chose to do that. I don't know if that answered all of your questions. I may have missed one.
You're close. So I think our purpose in being here is just to be able to question, like, is this going to be a positive or negative for our ownership of the property? And so, I really don't know.
And none of us can answer that question for you. All we can say is, we do have requirements in city code that they operate as a responsible type business. If they are causing a nuisance to either yourself or another neighbor, we do have provisions in code, and the commission could actually come back and tell the ambulance service, you're no longer approved to operate out of that location.
Okay.
If they're violating the city code requirement.
I like that 12-month grace period as well.
Yeah, and that would be an option. That wasn't a staff recommendation, but the commission could add that if they felt so to do.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sloman. I had a hand up there in the audience. Would you like to come forward, or did Mr. Tregaskis answer your question, sir?
I just wanted to say,
Well, before you start saying, come on up to the microphone, state your full name and your address, and we get a clean record.
I'm Frank Edens. I'm on 301 North Retreat Way in Show Low. And a number of years ago, we split the property with the Lopmans. And so we're right behind that property also. And so I just want to say that we have a little map showing where our property is if you need it. So we can give everybody a perspective.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any members of the commission have questions for members of the audience at this point? No. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion and possible motion for this item 6A.
I would like to just clarify, with the applicant.
Mhm.
I wanted to, is there ever a time when you do have to pop the button before you approach the deuce? Has that ever happened?
You know, I would say the only need for that would be if for some reason somebody was blocking a driveway and you were just trying to get their attention with an air horn or something.
Okay.
Let me just kind of back up a little bit to what Mr. Jagaska said as far as, you know, the goal is to reduce response times. We're under a mandate from the Department of Health Services Director to try to minimize response time. Currently, the closest ambulance to anything in that neighborhood is coming out of Linden from Timber Mesa. And then the next closest ambulance would be coming from, Timber Mesa Station 15, which is just around the corner from here. So we have a lot of space in between here and there, as we know that the speed limit on the Deuce is rather reduced. We really don't want to exceed that speed limit. It becomes inherently dangerous. So the idea is to kind of scatter these stations out, as Mr. Jagaska's mentioned, to minimize those response times. And what we're also doing in the industry as a whole is really we're getting out of using lights and sirens. We're finding that it causes accidents, secondary accidents, that people just aren't paying attention. All of a sudden you're behind them and they move over, not realizing there's someone next to them. And we're finding that on a national average, we're not arriving any faster. I conducted a study. I used 2 years worth of data that we had here, and it saved us 18 seconds. And so our policy is pretty strict anymore on whether we use lights or sirens anymore, because we're not saving any time, and we're actually creating a more of a danger. So we're moving back from that. So it would be very rare.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any more questions for the applicant or for, not this time? Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other discussion or possible motion?
Well, if it would make the residents feel a little more comfortable having a recheck in a year or a different time period, 6 months or whatever, to make sure that there is no complaints coming through. They've already been operating for 6 months, so, and there's been no complaints, so maybe we could just, what do you guys think?
I think
Another 6 months?
I would recommend if we had that, we would have staff review it, and if there hasn't been any issues or anything like that, then that would kind of be a sunset clause. It would go away. They wouldn't need to bring it back to us, and we'd have to have a formal meeting and all that. It would just be staff review it at 6 months, see if there's
I
any
think that's
issues, and if they're
perfect.
compliant, and if they're not, then they would bring it back to the commission. That. All right. I'm going to wordsmith that for you, Mr. Brown. I guess I'll make the recommendation. Chair usually doesn't do this, but I'll say I'd move to approve conditional use permit 602042220 submitted by Arrowhead Fire and Medical Authority to allow for an ambulance station on property located at 501 South Clark, that being APN, subject to staff recommendations, plus a third item under the staff recommendations, and that would be that conditional use permit 602042220 will be reviewed by staff, and as long as they're compliant with the conditions placed upon them by the conditional use permit, and they're compliant with city code, that review would ensure that they would not need to bring this back before staff back to the commission for a formal review. If there is any complaints, staff would bring that back to the commission for a review of this conditional use permit.
I second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Do you need any more? Do you have that down? Okay. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir. Thank you, members of the public, for coming. Mr. Eden and Mr. and Mrs. Lotman, we really appreciate it. You have some boilerplate language you'd like to give out to us?
I do. So anytime there's a conditional use permit that is approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, or any actions taken by the Planning and Zoning Commission. There is a 7-day appeal period. If no appeal is received by the city clerk within that 7 days, this conditional use permit will become effective with all the conditions of approval as required by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is call to the public. If anybody would like to address the commission, I will read the language that we have as far as a disclaimer. If nobody's going to move up, I'll save us that time. Tom, you sure you don't want to come up, say something to us? All right. All right, we'll go to item number 8, Planning and Zoning Commission approval of minutes.
I move they be accepted as written.
I have a motion and I have a second by Commissioner Josh Adams, excuse me. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, they carry it. Summary of current events. We'll start down with Commissioner John Adams. I know I'm gonna call Josh John probably at least 1,000 more times in my tenure here. So
Say Mr. Adams and you gotta
but,
come.
yeah, I'll just say Commissioner Adams and it'll mess with you the whole time. So. All right, John.
Just, I want to be careful. The road's kind of a little slick still, so that's all I have.
I just enjoy your Valentine's Day, everyone.
To say, I got to attend Rennie's Celebration of Life. It was phenomenal. It was well attended, and it's amazing moving forward, going through meetings. How many times I'm missing that guy. So, and then the second shout out, I want to shout out to Mel West, who's the guy that runs the TV here. I guess he won national championship with a doubles racquetball. So kudos to him.
Great, that's great.
Good at that.
I heard a lot of good reports regarding the daddy-daughter dance, so very happy with the feedback that we've been getting, and good job to the city. I think that's Parks and Rec, if I'm not mistaken.
I have nothing.
In this year, thank you.
I will just say I had the chance to go to the new Circle K that we have that's up and operational. I'm really impressed with that. The really nice, clean facility, and I saw a lot of young people in there working. It seems like a great place to start a career, and I like to see that growth in our community to give people the opportunity to get out and work and to start their careers and stuff like that. So appreciate staff's work on that and making sure that progressed very rapidly. It got up and going pretty quickly. So, Mr. Gaskis.
Thank you. Yes. So first of all, I would like to recognize that we have new business that's opened here in town. My wife ensured that we went on Friday night. I think we were there with half of everybody else. Culver's is open. If you drive by, you'll notice that there still are a few things that need to be done. Landscaping, lowering power lines, some different things like that. I read recently that this winter was our second wettest winter on record since we started keeping records, which was in 1984, I believe. So we have been working with them to get them open, but also to make sure that those other items are being taken care of. So those will be moving forward. Also, Daddy-Daughter Dance was mentioned. That is a very successful event that is hosted by our Parks and Rec Department. Every year, it seems to get more and more popular. And every year we have to turn people away because we can only fit so many people in where the event is being held. So we would like to encourage parents in the future, if you'd like to go to this successful event, please make sure you get tickets early to avoid disappointment. It is sad to show up and then find out that you're not able to go in. And then just one other thing, for those members of the public who tried to conduct business at City Hall this afternoon, we apologize. We had an electrical issue that popped up, as electrical issues do, which significantly impacted our ability to take care of business this afternoon. Our phone lines were down, our internet was down, and we had some issues with our electrical system, which meant we had to evacuate the building for a time. We will be open again tomorrow. So if we didn't get to see you this afternoon, please come tomorrow, and we appreciate your patience while we were working through that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Tregaskis. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Everybody else can stay.
It's gonna stay.
I want to stay all night.
Figure out what button to push here.
No, you don't have to push any button. It goes off automatically now.
Pretty good, yeah.
You're good.
Done. I'm out.
Yeah.